we had a conference and in Brussels, and I was told, well, the Russian delegation is in the back of the room, and they would really like to speak to you because, or someone from the team, because they are quite upset. So I met these very upset Russian delegation, and they complained that we didn't give them enough attention. And I said, well, it's not the place to talk about this here. Why don't you come to my office later in the afternoon, which they did. So I had these three Russian men standing in my office and being very upset. And I felt like, gosh, they have a reason to be upset because we didn't fulfill our end of the relationship.
Your business relationship starts, why am I haven't plugged this thing in, like, anyway, sorry. Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Sylvia Rhode-Liebenau. Sylvia is an accredited senior executive coach and accredited mediator with more than 25 years of experience as a coach, trainer, and facilitator. Her coaching work is firmly grounded in 25 plus years of experience as an expert and leader in large organizations in the world of international institutions, finance, and business. Sylvia's mission is to adapt leadership to the challenges of today's complex and fast-moving world and to help leaders succeed in this environment. This mission has led her to create the Smart Power Method and author the groundbreaking leadership book, Who's in Charge? A book helping leaders to increase their energy levels, expand and leverage their range of power, and combine the success with the fulfillment to build a legacy that they can wholeheartedly embrace now and at the end of their lives. Besides her corporate and coaching work, Sylvia is an artist and dancer with a broad range of experience in different art forms, including painting, modern dance, and dance improvisation, martial arts, acting, and singing. She's also trained in different forms of body and energy work. This breadth of experience allows her to apply a unique and powerful approach to emotional and body intelligence in her leadership and coaching work. Congrats on Who's in Charge, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Well, thank you, Carl. I was so delighted to be speaking to you today because human connection is basically my favorite topic.
Yes, I can tell from as I was reading your bio that you're very well versed in connecting in a number of different ways, and I think it's really exciting to talk with you about this because I think it's more and more important as kind of the world gets smaller and smaller, how to connect across countries and cultures, especially in the business sense, because there's so many complications and things that can go wrong when you're trying to work across borders, or especially expand into new countries as a business. So what are some of the things that you see leaders doing right, leaders doing wrong, and what are some of the best practices that you outline in your book?
Good. Well, we are talking about human connection. So my experience, having worked a lot in multicultural contexts and across cultures, is, first of all, we are humans. So if I manage to connect with the other human being as a human being, the game is almost won. It's like that's where the game is being played. Can I be a human being and connect to this other human being? Because we share more than what divides us. So that's to start with. Then, of course, there is a lot about getting to know a different culture. So I've worked in the Balkans, in the countries of the former Soviet Union, so in Russia, in Armenia, and Ukraine. In the past, I've worked in the US, I've worked in the United Kingdom, I've worked in the Northern African countries and Middle East. And when we go there, it makes a lot of sense to inform ourselves about what are things that we should be doing and what are things that we shouldn't be doing, and coming with a degree of respect and curiosity also, like, well, how do these people operate, and not think, haha, that's so funny, or that's so strange, but so how can I meet this person who comes from another culture and meet them where they are, rather than impose how I would be operating. And that is really a big success factor for being able to connect and then to work successfully across cultures.
Yeah, I love that meet where they are quote there that you mentioned, because it is such a mindset shift from the way a lot of people, especially in the US, operate. I've been fortunate enough to have traveled a lot internationally over the course of my life. I think I've been to over 25 countries. And one of the things I love is seeing not just the touristy locations, but just let's go look like to a supermarket, go see some where the locals live and how the locals, what
Yeah.
life is like, because it really showed me that the way that I'm used to doing things is not the only way or the best way. And it's not that there's a right or a wrong. It's just that there's option A, option B, option C. And then you also see that everyone where you go are working to solve the same daily challenges of life, that the what they care about, what they're worrying about, what they're doing is not that different from what I'm used to at home. And it really shows you how, like you said, how much more we have in common with each other than apart, and that these little differences in culture and in kind of the lifestyle, or the kind of the where people are coming from, get often blown out of proportion. And it's really that important to focus on more of what you have in common when you're trying to build those relationships. When you can, it makes a huge difference.
Yes. And that again is connecting to the human and to their needs and circumstances. I think one big difference between our Western culture, so especially Northern Europe, the US, and most other cultures on this planet, is that we are more transactional. I mean, there's also this term of low context, high context culture. Like, for instance, I'm German. We Germans often go like right to the subject matter. And in most other cultures, that's just not done. It's very impolite. And so it's much more elegant and effective to spend time to get to know the other person, to inquire, to do some chit chat, and also to yes, to be more personal, to invest that time in the more human connection, which in German we say like there's life and there is work, and the two are separate. And in many other cultures, they're never separate, because the life and the humanity always comes into it. And so when we connect to other cultures, we have to be aware of that.
Yeah, I agree that there is definitely I think you need a balance of both. We need to mention like the transactional nature of relationships and the personal connections. I think the best business relationships have, it's like a rebar and concrete, where transactions are the rebar, personal connections are the concrete, and you need both. And a lot of what businesses struggle with in the US is that they have a lot of rebar sticking out of the ground and have no concrete around it. They're trying to build on top of rebar, and it's not easy, and it hurts, so people don't stick around. And so but you can't just have a bunch of concrete as well, because it's going to crack and fade over time. So you need that balance. Yeah. And I've had a number of people on the show previously who have all mentioned that the impact, just taking 10 minutes at the beginning of a meeting just to talk about personal stuff with people, even like internally or with a prospect, of just having a non-transactional conversation segment at the beginning of just small talk, and that connective moment that is really not that much time, but has a huge impact on the business results and the like team performance and all these metrics that companies are always trying to improve, by cutting out a lot of the human-centric aspects of the relationship, and that's so counterintuitive.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are so much drilled to be effective that we kind of forget about that then. But I mean, the reason why we spend time in small talk is not because we want to waste time, but because that's where trust is being created. And when we create trust, then the business afterwards works so much better. And that's whether it's like across cultures or in our own cultures. We are still human beings.
Yeah, and I think it's that trust that is definitely, I mean, there's a study a couple months ago about like the consumer trust in businesses was like 17% in the US or something like that. It was really bad. It's because they're not taking the time to connect with people on that human level. So when you're working with people, like what's kind of the process they go through? What are some of the success stories you've had of people that are working on building back this human to human connection in their business?
Maybe I start with a personal experience that I had when I was still in organizational life, and then I add the coaching part. For me, one of the most like formative experience was in my first job when I worked at the European Commission, and I was managing a program for the former Soviet Union. That we had a project with or a program for the Russian telecom sector. We had a conference and in Brussels, and I was told, well, the Russian delegation is in the back of the room, and they would really like to speak to you because, or someone from the team, because they are quite upset. So I met these very upset Russian delegation, and they complained that we didn't give them enough attention. And I said, well, it's not the place to talk about this here. Why don't you come to my office later in the afternoon, which they did. So I had these three Russian men standing in my office and being very upset. And I felt like, gosh, they have a reason to be upset because we didn't fulfill our end of the relationship. And rather than being defensive, I met them on a human level. I said, I'm really so sorry. My predecessor didn't have the time. That's why they hired me to be there for you. And now you want to go back home to Moscow and have a success story and create some projects together. So let's sit down and see how we can work together in the future. But I understand you. And it was this understanding, and probably also my warmth and lack of defensiveness and lack of being like, I'm the representative of the European Commission, you are the representative of the Russian ministry. It's like just people talking, and you want to be successful and I want to be helpful and therefore also be successful. How do we do that between humans? And it was the beginning of a fantastic relationship. And what I learned there, and that's what I use with my clients today, is first of all, how can you, when things become difficult across cultures or with another business unit or whatever, how can you not get defensive, but stay in your body and reach out to this other human being so things can calm down. So it's really an exercise of, okay, I do not have to be defensive. I do not have to play the corporate game now. Like, why do you talk to me like that? You have nothing to demand of us because we are so perfect, etc. No, like, get into my body, not feel defensive, and reach out to the other person. And the practices that I do with my clients today is really about embodiment. It's really about how can I, in a difficult situation, be calm and grounded and talk to the other person in a connected way. That's why I love the theme of your show so much. It's like, how can I connect from within to the other person? And all the rest is very important, but it's technicalities. So how do I know about their culture? How do I, how am I able to use their codes rather than only use my codes? But the basic is really, how am I so embodied and so grounded that I can reach out from me as human being to the other human being.
Yeah, I love that story. And I think one of the things that also, when you have that, you avoid being defensive, and you recognize that they're a person who has a reason why they're feeling the way they feel, and you meet them where they are. It also, it opens you up to accept and be accountable for what the situation is. And just doing that, especially in today's world, is a big trust builder, because so often people are looking to shift the blame or make these corporate speak, not really apologizing, not really taking responsibility. And so when you're talking to someone and you say, oh yes, I understand where you're coming from, we messed up, we apologize, I apologize, and I'm here to help you, let's move forward and find a way to get you what you want so you can go home with a win. That is such a breath of fresh air for so many people, because the current, or like the recent culture is so much devoid of accountability and leaders being held accountable for their actions or taking responsibility voluntarily. So I can see how when you just did that, especially the people that had a legitimate reason for feeling neglected or slighted there, that just diffuses the situation completely and makes for moving forward possible, because you're not, again, like putting up walls or trying to seem like they did something to insult you when it was the opposite way.
And there's another point. Sorry, go ahead, please.
No, please finish.
I mean, asking everyone who's listening here, when someone else says, oh, I messed up, how do you feel about that? Will you then go and destroy that person? Or will you feel, oh, that's so nice, I actually like that person, I will work with them again, they take responsibility, and therefore we can really partner? And my experience is that most of us will see the quality of taking responsibility, accountability, saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I messed this up. We see that in others, but we are so damn scared of doing it ourselves. So with the knowledge that actually we appreciate it in others, we can be more courageous and do it ourselves. That's also what goes by vulnerability. It increases our power.
Yeah, just as you're talking, I think that's the same thing with vulnerability, is when you see other people do it, you go, wow, they must be really strong to do it. And then you think, oh, I can't do that. All people think I'm weak. But it's so weird how when the roles are reversed, our perception changes so dramatically. So what are some of the resources you use to help people understand other cultures and stuff? Is there like a good first step people can take if they're trying to become more culturally knowledgeable?
Well, there's a good step into the whole dimension of intercultural work, learning about low context and high context culture. I think it's a very useful framework to understand the fundamental differences. So the low context, where you can go straight into the business because it's like the context is not really important, and the high context is important. So we have to build relationship. We have to invest more in the context of where we operate. That's a good starting point. Then it's also really, if I go to Japan, then I want to know something about Japan before going there to work. And I ideally want to know little bits and pieces of the language, because it's a sign of respect. If I can show that I am enough interested in the other culture to know some bits and pieces of the language, more is better. And then it's to really approach everything I do with attentiveness and curiosity. So I don't come in, well, I know already how things are being done. It's like more in the sense of teach me. And that will go much further than saying, well, my road or no road, or my way or the highway.
Yeah, I really like that. Approaching it with curiosity, learning some of the language makes sense, and understanding the high context and low context for that culture, so I think is really, really important. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Sylvia. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it, and subscribe. If you'd like to connect with myself or Sylvia, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.